So I wanted to talk to you guys about, well, it's just a cheesy acronym really, economy in testing. So early, collaboratively, and once. So I'm Jenny Mulholland, as you can see. I don't have a program in a biography in the program, so I thought it was just worth a quick slide. I've been working in software development for 8 years. I originally started off as a developer at Symbian, working on mobile phone software. And I then sort of, as Jim says, sort of progressed into the quality and testing world. So I've worked at kind of a very large organisation like Nokia. I'm now working for a company called Softwire. We're a bespoke software development company, much smaller than Nokia. We've got an office in Bristol, office in London. And I'm lucky enough to work with a huge variety of projects. So mobile, web development, desktop applications, mixture of kind of agile customers, waterfall customers. Yeah, so in a relatively short space of time, I've seen quite a lot of different ways of working. If you want to sort of get in touch with me, you can find me just fairly newly on Twitter, and I've just started a blog as well. So I'd be happy for you guys to get in touch with me that way. So what I want to talk about today is how there are kind of a lot of excellent tools and techniques out there, and we've heard some of the more interesting ones this morning, even, or this afternoon. And they're to help you test more efficiently when you're actually kind of sitting down and doing your testing, about the techniques you're using and the methodologies you're using. But I just want to take a step back, really, to learn from my experience, I guess, or draw from my experience in all these different places, and think about the principles of what I've found to make software testing a more efficient and effective exercise. So this is about the sort of strategic thinking, I guess, where you're deploying your test resource and what you're using your testers for. So if we're talking intelligent testing, we're talking more kind of emotional intelligence, perhaps, or social intelligence, let's say. So one question is, what makes a test team cost efficient? I mean, we're here to talk about the efficiency and effectiveness of testing. So Nokia's approach was to have a very large test team, but they saved money by offshoring. Software takes pretty much the opposite approach. We have actually a relatively small test team. I suppose we're more on the shift left side of things, since that seems to be the buzzword of the day. Yet we still deliver very high quality software to our customers, and we pride ourselves on that, and we win a lot of repeat business. So I guess I'm here to sort of share my secrets. When I worked at Symbian, they actually sort of were heading towards that route, and they moved their system testers into the agile teams. And they did keep a small system test department, but it was mostly kind of moved into the agile side of things. And I think the real question really is, depending on your test setup and how you arrange your test teams, it's about responsibility for quality. Who has responsibility for quality? Is it something where you're throwing the software of defense to a team and they'll test the hell out of it, and the testers will sort out the quality side of things? Or is it coming back to the development team to be thinking about these things? So I think it's potentially less about the size of your team, but if you're following these kinds of principles that I'm talking about, you can get away with having a much leaner test team. So, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys are using agile methodologies. Yeah? A few nods? Or still on the sort of waterfall side? Or sorry, still on the waterfall side? What are you guys thinking? I mean, I think you have got an advantage if you are working in a kind of agile way, because aside from a whole bunch of extra processes and different processes, it's more about the people focus and about some of these things that I'm talking about are maybe easier to achieve within an agile test team or an agile methodology. But ultimately, this is about you. This is about, if you're a test manager, this is about your team. If you're a tester, this is about your effectiveness. And you can take these principles and try to apply them even no matter what methodology you're using. So the the first of my little acronym is testing early. So it's true in the medical world, it's true in the software world, that the best protection is early detection. So ultimately, rather than kind of, you know, throw things over the wall and hope that someone else will sort it out, you need to be setting high standards across the board from day one. I mean, I realise that a lot of what I'm saying is not rocket science, but I've seen examples where, for example, one of the teams at Nokia I used to work with, they had test cases, but they were all very high level, and their approach to getting them to pass was that on day one, 0% will pass, and by the time we've developed all the features, then 100% will pass. And there was no sort of middle ground, really. So I have seen people, for example, just assume that testing early means just integrating things early and sort of shoving it into the master code line, and, you know, then that way we'll find all the defects. So from experience, it is a lot more effective and efficient to set a high standard from day one, and to define the levels of testing which are appropriate to the stage of the development cycle that you're at. Ultimately, what you're trying to do early on in the project is identify risks, because that's where your money is going, basically, as far as I can tell. So you want your testers to be helping you to identify the risks in your software, and then once you've identified the risks, you want to be deploying your testers to kind of tackle those risks, or to be focusing on those risk areas. So, I mean, if you, what do I want to say? If you have testers, then rather than kind of waiting until the end of the development cycle and giving them some software and saying, test this, what you really want to be doing is picking their brains. Testers are very good at thinking of things that can go wrong, or analysing risk, or kind of working out where there's complexity in the system that you might not have realised originally. So you want them, if possible, to be kind of working up front, involved in the planning, involved in the business analysis, involved in estimation. Sometimes we've seen at Softwire, so we might estimate a story and it might be like 1 point or something because it's really easy for the developer. But when the tester looks at it, they say, well, actually, no, that's a 5-point story, because for you it's just setting one set of variables, whatever. But for me, I'm going to have to test sort of 12 different configurations of things. So this was my opinion on the single most useful place you could put your testers, basically, is reviewing requirements, getting involved in the business analysis, getting involved in the estimation, and looking for risks up front. Even if your testers never did any testing, they'd actually be picking out a lot of the holes just in looking at the requirements. I think, I'm not sure who it was talking about security earlier, but it sounds like that's the sort of approach that person's organisation maybe needs to start taking, is to have the testers getting involved earlier. Because otherwise, you know, by the time you've given it to the testers, it's too late, and it's a painful way to work. So yeah, so in summary, the risks and the gaps are what are going to cost you the most money if you wait until later to find them. You've got a lot of really bright testers who are really good at finding holes and picking holes at things. So get them in there early, and get them in there reviewing the requirements and kind of helping you put a test approach together. Testing collaboratively. So perhaps this is more of a personal thing for me. It's something that I've learned over the last few years. Ultimately, it's about kind of leaving your ego behind and realizing that other people out there can help you. And in fact, you can do a much better job that way. So seeking other people's inputs on testing and quality. So go and talk to the project manager, go and talk to the tech lead, talk to the business analyst. Talk to the developers. They actually know their software quite well. And if you're lucky enough to be in this position, talk to your customers, and obviously they're going to have quite a strong idea of what they want their software to do and how they want it to work. And these, again, are all people that can help you identify risks. and can help kind of plug the gaps up front, which is the more efficient way to work. So the earlier, again, you talk to these people, the better. So a couple of examples are that when I worked at Symbian, everybody's bonus had an aspect that was related to quality, had certain quality goals, and so everybody was taking responsibility for quality and was being involved in it. And that kind of encouraged collaborative behaviour, because suddenly the project manager woke up and realised that, oh, if I want to get paid my bonus, I've got to make sure we have some good testing in place, and we've got code reviews, and we've got this, that, and the other. So organisations can facilitate this, perhaps, with financial incentives or just discussion and openness around it. But as an individual, even if you're not working in that kind of environment, you can make the effort to go and talk to your project manager, talk to your developers, and just do that off your own bat, basically. So one other thing that I've kind of learned as well is that as a tester, you're better off being a helping hand rather than a gatekeeper. So I think that your job as a tester should be to help other people develop the best software they can, not to tell people off, not to pick holes in things for the sake of it. Again, it kind of comes back to getting involved. It's collaboration, but it's also early collaboration. So you want to make the developers' lives as easy as possible. If you're finding gaps in the requirements before they've even had to go and implement it, then you're making their life easier because you're setting the expectations, and they know what to expect, basically. So then when you come down the line and you test it, there's no surprises for anybody, and the developer's not going, oh, well, nobody told me it was supposed to work like that. John Stevenson said, developers are friends, not fools, or you should treat developers as friends. And if you take that attitude towards things, I think, again, it kind of drives you to work in a bit more of a collaborative way and to seek help from others. You can, as a tester, you can spend your time looking for ways to proactively improve the processes. So proactively improve the development process or the testing process, make life easier for other people, and as a result, your life will become easier, I guess. So at Software, we have something called test handovers, where after a story's been developed, I will sit down with the developer. The expectations are clear in that I expect them to have tested a bunch of stuff because we agreed it up front that these are acceptance criteria. We found some of the holes earlier on. And then that's a chance for them to show off to me all of the testing that they've done, the fact that all of the edge cases do something sensible, do what we agreed. And it's about showing off to the tester rather than tester picking holes in things. So learning in order to collaborate, well, this just helps you in your conversations, basically. It's helping you, if you're sort of learning other people's points of view. For example, a PM may be trying to rush a delivery through, and you're a tester thinking, well, why is this guy doing this? He just doesn't care about quality. Well, it might not be that. It might be that they know something you don't. Understanding the commercial pressures. Talking to developers, understanding code. I mean, I don't think that testers necessarily need to learn to code, but it's about a shared language with developers. If you can know what SOAP is and what HTTPS is and all these kind of things, then it makes their life easier to share information with you that can then make your testing better. And it works the other way. So through collaboration, you can learn from others, but importantly, others can learn from you. So as a tester, you can be focusing on training developers, spreading the good word of testing, as I call it, and this is the other single most useful thing that testers can be doing. I couldn't really choose between sort of training and evangelizing versus kind of reviewing requirements and trying to kind of make life easier from the beginning. But in summary, you need to let go of your ego and try to understand other people's points of view to sort of build trust and be able to work in a more effective way. And then my final point about testing once. So this is perhaps the most controversial of the three. It's something we're still experimenting with a bit at Software. But so in terms of testing, working out the difference between tests and checks, it's something that people have talked about quite a lot as well. It's a debate that's going on. But as a tester, you should be focusing on the areas, the risky areas, as I've mentioned, the areas where you're likely to find bugs. So if possible, I would say automate your regression suite, or don't have testers running tests where you're not really expecting to find bugs. Get the testers involved in the requirements process in the early stages, and you're likely to get more return on investment. And something we've been experimenting on BBC projects, for example, at Softwire, is we've been defining our cucumber scenarios, and then we've been trying to work out, okay, what's the best way to test this? Should the developer write a unit test? Should the developer write an end-to-end Selenium test? Should I test it manually? Or is the developer going to make sure that the calculation is correct, but I'll do some manual testing to make sure it looks good in all browsers, or something like that? So kind of defining the levels of responsibility and the appropriate levels for testing. So that's it. I'm running out of time here. Just to sum up again, early collaboratively once. These are principles which, as a manager, perhaps you can try and encourage in the team. As an individual, you can try and be about applying these. It's been mentioned a couple of times today, but yeah, testers don't own testing anymore. This is, or they shouldn't do. It's about sort of delegating out the responsibility, getting others involved, evangelizing and getting everyone to be responsible for quality so that you can use your testers where they're most valuable. Pick their brains as early as you can, plug the gaps in the requirements, set the expectations, let the developers then, fill in some of those gaps. And then you can make the best use of your testers on the riskiest areas and get them to be kind of training other people, and you can, from experience, you can run with a relatively small test team at that point, and you can still be very effective. So
okay,
that's it.
thanks.
Thanks.